Hello and welcome to Random Offense. I'm your host, Ethan Strauss. This is the place where we explore the overlap between sports, culture, business, sometimes even politics. But today, we've got, I would call him the best sports media critic in all the land, maybe ever. I'm just going to throw that out there. I'm not going to accept any humble contradiction from the one, the only Ryan Glasspiegel of Front Office Sports. How you doing, man?
Friday. Gotta get
Ooh.
down on Friday.
Yeah, well, you got up that energy. We got a good topic. We've got a topic about whether baseball has eclipsed the NBA as America's second favorite sport, and whether the media, the mainstream media, has gaslit us into not knowing that to be the case, Ryan. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a viral standoff between Sydney Sweeney and a GQ journalist. We're going to talk about the status of ESPN and how some are arguing that it's in deep decline. Plus, possibly on the business front, this whole battle between the aforementioned ESPN and YouTube/Google. But let us begin, Ryan. Baseball, baseball. This is a topic of yours. I feel like this is
This
close
has
to your
been my
heart.
pet cause since 2019.
You've been sounding this alarm right here. And for the first time, it appears others are taking it seriously. Last week, we had the finale, the incredible game 7 between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. And it's known to be one of the greatest baseball games ever played. Ratings for the modern era, I would say, were fantastic. And then when you take an international lens, not that that's the primary lens of ours, it might have been over 51 million people when you throw in Japan and Canada, some of these other countries. And it's led people to wonder. Many people are saying, I'm looking at a tweet right here from a writer responding to your tweet, actually. It appears baseball is firmly the number 2 sport in America. The World Series has demolished the NBA Finals over the last 2 years. The pitch clock has changed everything and is bringing fans back. Conversely, I think fans are rejecting the style of play in the NBA. A lot of different angles, man. What say you?
Well, there is a lot of different angles, but I've kind of been arguing this since 2019 that I think when you add all of the factors together, that if MLB isn't more popular than the NBA in aggregate across the United States, then it's close. And it's a lot closer than, you would think when you're watching national sports talk shows on ESPN or FS1, where the NBA, just the market share of conversation versus MLB is gotta be like 95 to 5 if baseball's even at 5. And so, here's where it comes down to. For the most part, even though the World Series did beat the NBA, more people nationally watch NBA telecasts than MLB throughout the season. And the NBA is a much bigger national TV deal to go along with that. Um the where then also social media. NBA beats MLB on social media. That is undeniable. So those things are firmly in the NBA's corner. But then you start to look at other factors. You look at local TV viewership, and I did a study in 2019 that showed on a per game basis, in cities where there is NBA and MLB teams, the MLB teams have more viewers than the NBA teams in most of them.
Hmm.
And so like there's this idea that like the NBA is this urban sport, but where the NBA really cleans up, Ethan, is in outposts like, Oklahoma City,
Yep.
Salt Lake City, Memphis, especially when the Grizzlies are hot. They get enormous ratings there where they're the only professional team in town. And then you look at attendance, and there's about 50% more people go to the average MLB game than the average NBA game, and there's twice as many of them. And people are like, well, the stadiums are so much bigger, the arenas are so much smaller. It's like, wait a minute. There are some big arenas. Like they could build arenas that are the size of baseball stadiums and they don't do it.
Hmm.
They just built this new Clippers arena in the second biggest city in America, and it holds 18,000 people. You don't think like they would want to build a 30,000 person arena if they thought that many people would go to Clippers games, and then you can sell that many more tickets to concerts and WWE and whatever else passes through there? Like, no, they have a limited capacity and they're building their facilities for that. You disagree with this part?
I don't disagree with it. It's an interesting point because I think the limitations of the sport are part of it. That I don't think many people want to be really far away from an NBA game in the way that they would tolerate being far away from the vast green expanse of baseball. But the counter argument that helps you is, hey, that's a feature of baseball, right? That's part of the appeal. It is what it is. There are more people willing to be in person for this than
You
there are
don't
for
pay a lot of
basketball.
money to go to those Final Four games in football stadiums. So,
Mm,
and those are far away. And I've been sitting far away in some of those games. I don't think I would do it again, but to your
mm.
point, so I don't know that's a great argument for me, but they do it. And yeah, someone messaged in the chat like load management. We've gone through all of these things with the NBA where they tell you that the regular season doesn't matter with how much the stars are resting. The players don't seem to have any type of emotions either towards the fans or even winning. We've gone through that. You look at like baseball teams when they win, they have these champagne celebrations. When the Oklahoma City Thunder won the table, it was like, a bulletin board material at the Stoic convention. Like they just it wasn't any type of like hugely meaningful experience in their lives. And so we've been through all of this like that, like the players in baseball seem to love playing baseball and relish the idea of winning and hate the idea of losing more than you see in these NBA games. But it's I think it's been like, so game 7 of the World Series.
Can I don't want to derail you, but it's just an irony, and this is an interjection. There is a player on the Dodgers who told a friend of mine, a reporter, and I know it on absolute good authority, that he doesn't like baseball at all. He dislikes it, and that basketball is by far his favorite sport. And he just happens to be amazing at this. So there's an irony there that baseball, even though there are such people who just happen to be great at it, are actually conveying a love of the game versus the NBA. But you were saying, Ryan.
So game 7 of the World Series drew over 50% more viewers than game 7 of the NBA Finals. But Ryan and Ethan, there's a big market, the Dodgers. Oklahoma City and Indianapolis cannot compete.
The
Um,
squeaky NBA fan has entered the chat.
but no, it's the last 2 years with the Dodgers, and by the way, the Dodgers are going to be in this a lot more. So get used to using like the Dodgers as some type of like, whoa, they've got the Dodgers in there. Yeah. And they're going to be there probably at least half the time for the next decade. So that's going to be somewhat of a constant. And as far as my crystal ball goes, but you've made the point, Ethan,
Mm-hmm.
that, as much as fans claim to hate dynasties, they
Yeah.
tune in for them.
Yeah, they want continuity. They want familiarity. I think it's conflated with big market. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that I don't believe that more people would watch the Knicks in the finals than if the Warriors made it back there. You can call me Bay Area biased, but I think the NBA made a mistake. If I'm going to give an overall criticism of Adam Silver, who has certainly done certain things well, I don't think he understands people. I think he works backwards from focus group responses and tries to figure it out from there and almost makes the mistakes you would anticipate a malfunctioning AI to make, where it's, well, I see that people like scoring, people like offense. Let's make it so every game is 150 to 145. No, that's not what people like. They just don't want it to be the doldrums of the early 2000s. They want something that's more in balance. People say that only a few teams can compete. We need parity, parity, parity. We need like a hard cap. No, people might complain about that, but certainly casual fans at least want to recognize who's good and want to feel part of some piece of history. And if it feels like a raffle every year, it's not as interesting. So I think one of my themes on this right here, I'll give a couple stats and then we're going to put up charts of what the ratings look like. One of my themes is that I think baseball is actually not gaining. I think the NBA is slipping and it's creating this dynamic right here. But let me read these stats from my article because you said you've been making this argument since 2019, Ryan. I think
Mhm.
2019 might be the right year to isolate because that's when it really started accelerating and your argument started gaining purchase. In the pre-COVID times, 9 out of 10 of the championship rounds, that's World Series versus NBA Finals, 9 out of 10, the NBA had a bigger audience than the MLB. The only time it wasn't so was that crazy Cubs Indians classic. Oh my God, one of these teams is going to make history. That was the only time over that 10-year span.
You got to stop calling it the MLB. It's just MLB.
The Major League Baseball. I say it like a foreigner. The Major League Baseball. I love the Nine Mets are my favorite. Well, now I'm doing an Eastern European accent of what a goose
now
said in
get
this
to the
instance.
since COVID.
Yes. Since COVID, the last 6 championship rounds between the sports, World Series outdrew the NBA 4 out of 6. That's a shift. And we can get into the specificity of the matchups and we can get into how many games and the markets and everything else. But that's interesting. That's interesting and runs totally counter. If I were to tell anybody in 2019, Ryan, in sports media, you know what? I think the MLB is going to eclipse the NBA in interest. And it's going to be that the World Series is getting more watched than the NBA. Everybody would have acted like that was the craziest thing. There was no reason to believe such a thing. Baseball was dying. It's old and gray. The NBA is cool with young people. That was the predominant belief. So something has shifted. Let's see. Let's get the chart. I sent a note on these ratings, these screenshots right here, because in the broader sweep, the leagues are going through the same thing. And by the way, I didn't even tell people you can raise your hand and ask a question. I should have mentioned that part to anybody watching, but NBA viewership by year for the finals, you can see that there's been a downward trend over the broad sweep of history, but a particular drop, let's say over the last COVID, pre-COVID to now. Okay, let's see the World Series. If we can see that. If we can't, it's okay, because I can describe that it is much the same, except less so recently. That is what I would say. That is what I would describe. So, Ryan, I just think this is a matter. It's more a story about the NBA than it is about baseball. I think they did a great job with the pitch clock. I think you can only hit a target if you aim for it. And MLB has been trying to become more exciting, but I don't think they've totally reversed their fortunes. I think they got a little shot in the arm from Ohtani, and this is all part of the same trend.
You look at like attendance this year, like the amount of people they get through the turnstiles. And I know they're like, okay, well, it's summer, it's pleasant to be outside, it's something to do, but they had their best attendance in I think quite some time. I don't have the numbers right in front of me right now, but that they had that going for them. And so I do wonder though if the NBA could take a page out of MLB's book in this, where, Rob Manfred realized they had a problem with this pace of play and realized like it wasn't just the pitch clock, it was banning the shift, it was making it so relievers had to pitch to at least 3 batters, or like if they came in during an inning or something like that.
Yep.
And so Manfred hired Theo Epstein, who was one of like he was at the vanguard of MLB analytics and a way that kind of broke the aesthetics of the game. And it wasn't just him, but he was one of the most successful at it, winning titles with the Red
Yeah.
Sox and the Cubs. What if Adam Silver hired somebody like Daryl Morey and was like, okay, why don't you tell us like we want to get games in the 100 to 110 range. We want less 3-point attempts per game. We want more kind of action in the air and mid-range jumpers. How do we legislate these rules to do that? It's kind of like hiring an ex-blackjack cheat to help the casinos identify what their holes are.
I love it. It's a little bit like hiring a thief to secure the house. I think it's a great idea. And I think you made a good point, because I'm arguing that this is less about the aesthetics and that it's less about too many threes or the politics. We did talk about those COVID times, and I do think that left a dent, but all the leagues are engaging in that behavior to a certain extent. But baseball made its reform about the field of play. That's what they sought to address. And not only did they make the reform about the field of play, they conceded that the fan was correct to want the sport to be more like what they liked in the past. The NBA did not really do that, not formally, not officially. The NBA made the reform about the structure. That's what they made the reform about. They made the reform that you couldn't have super teams, that you couldn't have too much talent, that every team's third option couldn't be there for long term. And it turns out that wasn't what they should have been doing. They would have been way better off doing what you're suggesting and actually addressing some of these complaints the fans had, which I think even if the complaints aren't the reason, trying to address the complaints serves a function, at least showing that you're trying to make the fans happy. I don't think a lot of fans get that sense from the NBA right now.
No, I don't think so either. You know, they had a great start to the year. We'll give the NBA that. The NBA on NBC, that was great. People are like really high on Amazon's coverage. I'm seeing a lot of people saying that Blake Griffin is really refreshing. Even like Inside the NBA on ESPN, it fits like a glove. It's the same show.
Yeah.
When it's not there, you're like, okay, it should be there more often. But in the postseason, when we're more tuned into this, they will be there a lot. And so I think there have been like a lot of fixes in the presentation of the game, at least by the networks. But no, they're not doing anything to address the fact that this game has become basically dunks, layups, and three pointers. It's almost like it was like the three true outcome baseball guy: walk, strikeout, or home run. The shift
Oh yeah.
undoes that because you want to see more action on the bases, and so you're not having like these rocket liners that should be like a base hit get caught by like the
I
third
love
infielder on a side.
I love banning
So
the shift. I want more banning of it. I don't want anybody in any situation standing on that second base bag. I want to know it's a hit off the bat. And I love how they pitched it. They did a brilliant job with the ad 2 years ago, narrated by Bryan Cranston, about the rule changes that they were implementing to get back to the way it was. And the slogan was something to the effect of, "It's the best game in the world. Now it's even better." And you haven't seen that kind of ambition from the NBA. I think the NBA has been fighting the spiritual battle. And now we're going to get into this other territory with this topic, which is the media influence and conversation. I think media was far more, let's say, open to acknowledging the flaws of baseball, which then helped baseball acknowledge that it had flaws, than was happening in the NBA, where it feels like the media covering the NBA is always in this spiritual, politicized battle with Clay Travis. And there's no acknowledgement that anything is amiss because then Donald Trump wins a third term or whatever. And as crazy as that sounds, I swear to God, it is part of the conversation.
yeah, you know, you don't see the NBA focused media taking a shot at aesthetics, but it's kind of interesting because like yeah, the MLB media will say like things that are wrong with baseball, but I think that a lot of the media was like actually against the banning of the shift. The pitch clock is a different thing. I think a lot of people understood that one, but like a lot of people didn't like the banning of the shift, and I think Manfred and Theo were right on that one, and
Oh,
the
yeah.
media was wrong. There's no clamoring for reform. Like, you know, there like you'll see like Stephen A. Smith or like Charles Barkley go after current players either for load management or calling them soft or anything like, you know, Shaq will wag his finger at DeAndre Ayton. Barkley does this, but they won't like there's not anybody like carrying like tiki torches marching saying we need less 3-point attempts in this game.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong. We looked at some of the figures of the opening week. I think it got a little bit marred with their crazy indictment, FBI scandal. Some things were going well for them, but I feel like we're just going right back to the doldrums. We're going right back to Wemby. Maybe he's not the GOAT already. Woo, Warriors looking a little shaky. About the only thing going great from an NBA casual fan perspective is the Lakers, but that's without LeBron. And people can be divided about whether that's a good or a bad thing going forward. It just feels like it's lost juice. And the counter argument is, why should they care? Why should they care? They just got paid more money than God. Who cares if Amazon is not getting a good return on their investment? And you've told me that their ratings have not exactly been great on Prime or whatever they're doing over there with Blake Griffin.
The
That's a
first weekend was
yeah.
up from like what ESPN was last year. Now they changed
Okay.
the ratings a little bit, but I don't we haven't seen the second weekend ratings yet, which we have this private theory that when they don't like rush to tell you what the ratings are, you could probably guess about how good they are. They love trumpeting the press releases when things are great. I haven't seen a press release for NBA ratings since like the first like 5 days. So you could be right on that. I haven't really been tracking them, and we really still like miss these like websites that used to
Oh,
chronicle them every day. Because those gave us a lot more fodder, and now you kind of have to go looking for them.
yeah, we nerds certainly miss that. And people say, why should you care? Why should anybody care? And I go, you don't have to care, but I care. And a lot of people do care. A lot of people care about what's popular. A lot of people want other people to like what they like. I've always said that if people didn't like the World Cup in large numbers, it ceases to be the World Cup. It ceases to be all that interesting if there's not all this interest around the world. So that's one of the reasons why we track these things. And I mean, I'm interested in this. Here's a topic for us to discuss. The perception of ESPN. I want to know all about that. There was an awful announcing article out there. Maybe we could throw it up on the screen if we've got it. The article was titled "The Perception of ESPN is at an all-time low. Subhead: Has the sports fan lost trust in the worldwide leader of sports?" So, it's big claim, Ryan. All-time low for ESPN. I don't know
I
if I feel that way. I think their power is at an all-time low, is what I would say. I think they matter less because they're not in everybody's house. But I don't know. Is there all this ESPN hatred out there? What's going on? I felt like the nadir for ESPN, it probably had more to do with politics. And when that was more in the public view, I think they've divested from a lot of that. I think they still have some charismatic personalities. I crush them all the time. I criticize them all the time. I think their decline is really at this point a little more structural. And I'm going the other way. I'm doing the zigzag on it. What say you?
I think you're right on this actually. So, when it was at the height, I think 2016 to 2020 was probably the nadir. When you look at like Kaepernick and all of like the stuff like the wrangling over like how to deal with Trump's first term amongst the talents. I think that it was at a lower point there, and they've tried to make some of these like big fixes. I mean, they went and got Joe Buck and Troy Aikman for Monday Night Football. They went and got inside the NBA. They've added Pat McAfee and Nick Saban to Game Day, and that's setting records. So when you look at like what they focused on as far as like their biggest and most important properties, they monopolize the SEC. They've done a pretty good job there. But there is some like, blocking and tackling details that I think people are gonna have issues with them forever. But I
Yeah.
think right what has really hurt them this week is the YouTube TV carriage dispute because
Mm-hmm.
um you know that is 10 million customers. ESPN has about 70 million subscribers, but those YouTube TV subscribers are heavily indexed big sports fans. Those are people who they're not there for like news or entertainment by and large. They are there almost mostly for sports. And you look at like their it's almost like DirecTV when DirecTV had Sunday Ticket. There was like a faction of like rural people who couldn't just get cable hookup combined with just like the most psycho sports fans in the country. And YouTube TV, I think, has is over indexed with the most psycho sports fans in the country. And so when you're telling them you can't have SEC football, you can't have Monday Night Football, they're livid. And the thing is, and Clay Travis and Jason Whitlock have pointed this out, and I know we're not supposed to cite them, but like they're saying, like, well, YouTube customers like YouTube. ESPN people tolerate ESPN. And I
Mm.
don't know that like it's like ESPN when we were kids just had
That
this.
feels like a cowherdism right there. That sort of framing. Sorry to interject. The
But when we were kids, like, and dinosaurs roamed the earth,
yeah,
ESPN had this sterling brand. I mean, it had like we loved all these sports center anchors. Like you almost didn't want to watch anything besides ESPN. And the world has changed because now you can get your highlights anywhere, and that was the bread and butter of Sports Center. And you can get your news anywhere, and we just live in a more polarized society. I don't think there's a media brand alive right now that has anything approaching like the universally beloved brand that ESPN had when we were kids. And you can
yeah.
look at a lot of companies where in this age of polarization, they just don't like you can't please everybody. And so in that awful announcing article, like they made the point, it's like some people think ESPN is too woke, and then some people think ESPN isn't woke enough. There was all of this like backlash when they canceled Around the Horn. So it's and then ESPN points out, well, ratings are up 19% since we did that. So it's all this like it's impossible to please everybody right now if you're a media brand. You almost have to try to like appeal to some tribe. But sports has traditionally been where you're trying to appeal to everybody, and they're stuck in this like position where they are they're down 30 million homes, and people are picking at them right and left over any editorial decision. So they're at this crossroads with YouTube TV because Disney's losing $5 million a day in this dispute, and I don't even know what the dispute is like about. Obviously YouTube TV is making them some offer that ESPN thinks is too low for the
Yeah.
subscription, but we've been really scant on any type of specific details on it.
Well, we have somebody asking about it. Ryan S says, "What about the current YouTube TV, aka Google slash Alphabet, versus Disney ESPN spat that's currently going on? Disney is clearly trying to screw YouTube TV to benefit Hulu. If Lena
Uh,
Khan was still FTC chair, I could see an antitrust case against Disney coming quick." I think
okay, so
Khan.
there's two things that are true. Yes, Disney owns Hulu Live and Fubo, which are direct competitors to YouTube TV. And Disney has launched this ESPN direct to consumer property for $30 a month, where that's a much higher margin customer than a YouTube TV subscriber who is getting $10 a month to ESPN. I understand that. But I think I don't think that we know because we don't know what the where the gulf is in the two sides respective offers. So no one has really reported that, right? Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it, but if I'm guessing, not at the exact terms, I just this might be of a piece with the general issue right now for ESPN as it weakens, which is if you're going to war, if you're going to war with Google over this and over what you want the price to be, Google can just wait all eternity. You know, they don't need to do a deal with you desperately like some of these other
Right. It's
companies
not
and
the same thing
networks.
as you're right. It's like Comcast and Spectrum, their whole business is the people who pay them for TV and internet, right?
Yeah.
Google, like YouTube TV, I don't even like to call it a sliver of Google's business would be an insult to the word sliver.
Yes.
It means nothing compared to their search and AI and regular YouTube and on down the line. I mean, when you like ESPN is used to like fighting businesses that are relatively on a similar level as Disney, but this is like a mouse fighting a mastodon.
Yeah. And that gives leverage. That's leverage. That's inherent leverage right there. So I don't know the particulars, just like you don't know the particulars, but this is a harder battle just based on that alone.
Yeah, I mean,
And
and you know what, like, is
yeah,
interesting in this is like Google poached the ESPN executive who's like in charge of negotiating these carriage rights to make him in charge of like all of their sports. So this guy was like somewhere. He was like the number two to Jimmy Pitaro, Justin Connolly, and he negotiated all these deals with all these other providers. So they did a settlement, and he's supposed to like recuse himself from these negotiations. But it seems kind of like it's got to be a situation like, when a baseball manager gets
Yeah.
ejected, but he's actually calling the shots from the tunnel.
Yeah.
Who could stop them from doing that, right?
No,
Like,
you can't. You can't stop it, just like the NBA can't stop its players from telling potential gamblers about injuries. You just can't stop talk unless it's overt, unless it's sloppy. It's impossible. And more on the ESPN front, you want to talk a little bit about how they've already disposed of the in-house casino operation and now are joining everybody else. There just seems to be a strategic issue right now at the company.
yeah, that was an interesting one yesterday. So, like, very early in the morning, we get the news that like ESPN has pulled out of ESPN Bet. And so this was like a you can't fire me, I quit situation because ESPN Bet, which was like the parent company is Penn that previously owned Barstool Bet, sold it back to Portnoy for $1. Penn did a deal with ESPN, 10 years for a total of $2 billion. So that's $200 million a year to license the ESPN name for their sports book. And earlier this year, it became clear that ESPN was not hitting anywhere close to the projections of how many people it needed to be driving to bet on this app as what Penn would need to make that money back. And so Penn was going to opt out of the deal, and ESPN knew it. So instead of like waiting for the guillotine, they went and made like a different deal with DraftKings where it's like, okay, now you're going to be the official sports book of ESPN. And then they told Penn, we're opting out.
Hmm.
What is your take on all of this?
I don't have a take on it other than that they were late to the gambling bonanza and quick to try to make a quick buck. And it wasn't a sustainable project. And now they're just limping back to doing what everybody's doing. And I'm watching, and this isn't necessarily related to this particular story, but there's just odd behavior from some of the personalities, whether it's Stephen A. Smith trying to benefit from the way he was criticized for playing solitaire during an NBA game, and he's doing this promo. And I saw people were getting mad at Mina Kimes for joining in the promo. I don't know how much they're getting paid to do it, but there's just this. I don't want to call it rats fleeing a sinking ship. That would be an exaggeration. But there's something unwieldy about the operation right now. And I feel as though the personalities within it can sense that there's something about it that doesn't quite feel like something you're going to be doing 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So you got to get what you can get currently.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can speak to that, but I will say that a lot of these ESPN personalities are not the type of person you're going to follow onto a new gambling app. So, like the Barstool people, that business made sense because I think people would follow Dave Portnoy and Dan Katz onto that. And ESPN didn't really grow the market share from what Barstool had already built. So I think that that kind of justifies that. Now, what Barstool's issue was with the regulators, because they got blocked from getting a license in New York, and then they got really gummed up in Massachusetts over like things like Big Cat had a can't lose parlay, and the
Mm,
regulators are like, well, this is false advertising. And they're like, no, it's a joke, you idiot. But
yeah.
like there were things with the Barstool brand that like Penn maybe could have known in advance, but I don't think they realized the extent to which like the regulators and the New York Timeses of the world would never leave them alone. And
Mm,
so they ended up just having to cut bait and doing this deal with ESPN, which also failed, but for different reasons. But like, ESPN is probably better partner for DraftKings where um everybody already has DraftKings and everybody already has FanDuel. So now DraftKings has these big deals with Barstool, ESPN, NBC, a number of other places, and ESPN is driving awareness of it instead of probably new customers.
Titonia World says people just hate Stephen A. Smith. Now, I wouldn't reduce it to that. And we are admirers of Stephen A's talent, certainly, as an entertainer, but he's not on the nothing. There, I believe, is an aspect here of Stephen A. Smith having been Peter principled over there to covering anything and everything to the point where there's no way that he could actually cover anything and everything, and people getting sick of it and feeling like it was contrived. There was a lot of anger, for instance, when he made Knicks Pacers as a playoff series just to Stephen A. Palooza about his Knicks fandom. There was anger aforementioned about the playing of solitaire during the game. And people get that he's an entertainer. All these guys are entertainers, but there's just not as much trust in, say, there's more trust in a Scott Van Pelt than whatever Stephen A. Smith is doing daily over there at ESPN. I do think that those two brands a little bit linked and sunk together.
Yeah, but like they moved off of him some with this inside the NBA acquisition. Now you're going to be seeing less of him in these big spots, right? So, I don't know. I think that they kind of realized it and pulled back a little bit.
Okay. Well, I think it's been part of it, and it might speak to our weird, nuanced opinion about how this isn't the nadir in terms of public perception, but we're aware of some of what drove them to the current nadir. And additionally, for some other nuance that just can't be summed up in a sentence, the real nadir is structural. The real nadir is the death of the cable bundle. The real nadir is weakness, because even if ESPN had a problem in terms of its perception, in terms of its approval, a lot of the resentment and hatred towards it was about how we needed it. It was the resentment of a partner that you knew you could not split up from. So that was, I believe, fueling a lot of it. It was that it's pervasive. I need it. So that's why I'm angry.
Yeah, the psycho sicko sports fans, and I'll consider myself and probably yourself like you, well, I don't know. If you didn't have this career, like if you were a management consultant for Huron Consulting or something like that, could
Yeah.
you live without ESPN? Because I couldn't. If I had any other job in the world, I would still be like a psycho sicko sports viewer. I don't watch anything else. Like I barely watch scripted entertainment,
Me
and
too.
so um I would need it no matter what. Like I don't even know what I would end up paying if I had to, if my life came down to it. But um that is probably at the heart of the frustration is you have to tolerate ESPN if you're a massive sports fan. And at least in the ancillary programming around the games, now they've done a good job with like their presentation of college football, college basketball, NFL, MLB. I think they're improving it in the NBA. They fixed their top team. They fixed
Mm.
the studio show. So that they are trying to fix this stuff. But if you look at it around the edges, then you're getting and you like you grew up revering watching Sports Center. I don't think you like their talk programming as much.
I like what you said about me. I'd like that people would think I'm such a fancy person. I actually think I'm the reverse of some of the other pretentious sports personalities out there. I think I come off like way less of a sports fan than I actually am deep down when nobody's around. Whereas there are others who are secretly, they don't watch the sports anymore, and it's almost the reverse. I
It's
think
almost like not so secret. Like sometimes you'll like be scrolling your phone during an NFL Sunday and you'll see like an ESPN personality who's supposed to be like living and breathing these games. They're like on Instagram figure skating at Rockefeller Center or something.
well, I have to give myself permission to sometimes tear away. We both have kids, and that's part of the whole thing. But yeah, I think that's a natural thing that also happens, that people become a little bored with sports when they've got to talk about sports. I think that's part of what propelled me to whatever I do now, but yet I cannot completely get away from it. We've got other comments. Ryan S. It's also the death of large production studios related to sports political commentary. YouTubers are displacing the studio model. True. And there are reasons for that. Too much overhead for these shows to be live for 5+ years, similar to radio being displaced by streaming/podcasting. Now, I think the YouTube growth, a lot of that is because you can be critical. and they can mock the athletes and make fun of them. There's something of a disadvantage to having a studio show and having those connections to the athletic world. I watch YouTubers, they'll just crush
And the league
Kaminga for being a bum.
offices, by the way, like, ESPN cannot there's a line where they can't cross with all of the leagues.
Yeah. Well, that as well. It's not just that. It's not just the social. It's not just the interpersonal. It's also the conflict of interest with money. And that's part of it. So, yeah, that really gives YouTube a tremendous amount of space to be like classic talk radio and just crush players.
Well, they have also, most of these shows have much lower scale too. Like, I don't know exactly where First Takes like daily viewership is. It's got to be at least like 300,000 concurrent viewers a day. You look on like YouTube, even some of the bigger shows, like the most I'll ever see with McAfee, I don't know what, like 50 or 60 grand. Like, the ESPN is still reaching a lot more people live concurrently than a lot of these YouTube shows.
True. That's true. Let's go into the culture politics section of this here show.
Oh boy.
I was fascinated by a viral moment, fascinated by it. And I had a feeling about it that some of my friends crushed me for, Ryan. I
Oh
was
boy.
crushed for the feeling that I had. Can we find the viral Sydney Sweeney interview clip with a GQ editor? Can we find that? Can we see that? Being asked about her good genes ad that created controversy among crazy, over socialized people, in my opinion.
Criticism of the content, which was basically that maybe specifically in this political climate, like white people shouldn't joke about genetic superiority. Like that was kind of like the criticism, broadly speaking. And since you are talking about this, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that specifically.
I think that when I have an issue that I want to speak about, people will hear.
Oh my God. I think, man, Rob Henderson had a funny tweet about it. The writer Rob Henderson, about how so much was going on. This kind of female nuanced interaction in our tiny male brains. We can't even wrap our minds around all the many layers that were happening there. The trap laid, the trap evaded, how it all went down. But I felt a little bad for the journalist. I shared it in a group chat of friends. I was getting crushed for that. That this sort of journalist is the kind of journalist who probably would have tried to get me fired and destroyed 5 years ago. So why does my sympathy drift in that direction, Ryan? And I just see her becoming an internet main character. This Stoffel is her name, this editor, and embodying all this stuff that a loud, large cohort hates. And I understand the hatred. I get it, but I couldn't help it, Ryan. I'm a softie, and maybe at heart a journalist. I felt bad for Stoffel. I felt bad for Stoffel being contrasted against the beauty and celebrity of Sydney Sweeney as she's making that weird face, trying to get Sydney Sweeney to grovel and being swatted away. Felt bad.
Yeah, there's so many different elements of this, right? Like that journalist probably like hasn't been like everybody in her life at work and friends and people growing up or social circle would think that was just like a totally reasonable question,
Yep.
right? So like she hasn't probably been like around anyone whose like reflex is to say like shut up, no one cares. And so then there's like, I'm gonna give you an opportunity. Like she's doing like Sydney Sweeney a favor. Um,
Giving you the opportunity. So
like,
nice of her. So
oh
gracious.
wow, like I love opportunities. Thank you so much. This means a
Yeah.
lot.
Don't
And
you love
I
the
I will
opportunity to
not
talk
let you.
about a racial controversy extemporaneously? Isn't that just the best? I mean, it's so
I will
great.
not let you down for giving me this opportunity. I will remember it forever.
I will give 110%. I'll work so hard.
And like, it just, it was. I'm sure that it was something that she was also tasked to ask about. Like, I know she
Mm.
has the editor title, but we all report to somebody. And I would imagine that that was something like I don't know, maybe she just came up with it on her own, but she's also not somebody who is like this like professional broadcaster either, right?
Exactly.
Like it's not like a trained she's not a trained anchor. And like in this new world where we're having to get video, who knows how this even like came about that like she was chosen for this interview and it's broadcasted on video or something. But like this is somebody who seems to be more of a writer than like a news host, right? So
Yeah.
she's not like really doing what it seems like what her core competency is. And so I can get feeling bad for her, but it's also just like a perfect distillation of like a 15-second clip that's just made for this day and age.
Definitely. She became a human meme, and that's why she's got my sympathy. Stoffel does. At the same time, I find this sort of mentality from the Stoffels of this world to be quite obnoxious. And this need to have people grovel and atone, and this idea that these controversies are just really a big deal, and you've done a bad. And this climate, I hated the way she said the political climate right now. Like, you're just supposed to know what that means. It's this vague allusion to Trump racism. And I'd like to ask this person, this Stoffel, well, when was the climate something that was acceptable over the last however many years? Is this just a perpetual climate that makes us be neurotic and makes us have to confess and atone? But somebody tweeted it. I don't know anything about the tweeter. So if this is a bad person, good person, I have no idea. Hunter Ash said, the thing you have to remember about this woman and those like her is that she genuinely doesn't know that anyone disagrees with her basic worldview. She
That's what
doesn't
I
even
said.
see
Yeah.
it as a worldview. It's just the obvious truth. Of course, she knows abstractly that half the country voted for Trump, but those aren't people. Those are cartoon characters. They're either fat, slobbering rednecks and clan hoods or mustache twirling robber barons manipulating the rednecks for profit. Her mental models of them are less complex than her mental model of a squirrel. It's a good line. Anyone she might actually sit down and talk to is, of course, a person, and therefore agrees with the obvious truth. It is inconceivable to her that anyone capable of being a pleasant dinner party guest would not share her basic beliefs and values. She wasn't trying to do a gotcha or extract a pledge of fealty. She was certain that Sydney Sweeney is a person and therefore only got mixed up in the whole jeans fiasco by mistake. She was trying to do Sydney a favor by giving her a chance to clarify that she is in fact a human being who agrees with the things all real people
An
agree with.
opportunity.
An opportunity. I think I agree with that treatment. I
Yeah.
think a lot of the people watching, right, I mean, who watched it happen and reacted, that assumed that it was a trap, and it was a trap to an extent. I think it wasn't as malevolent an attempt by this person as it was received. I actually
Well,
agree with that interpretation.
it was certainly an attempt to elicit an answer which would draw widespread attention, and as far as that goes, success. Because GQ clipped this, right? Like it was
Wow.
them that put it out. I think.
Brutal.
I think like GQ was the one who isolated this clip and sent it into the world.
I've got a leaf blower in the background right now. Can you hear that, or is
I
that
can't hear it.
okay?
I think you're
So
going crazy enough.
if I can't hear what you're saying, we'll just act like it's my standard narcissistic blabbering, and but you understand that there's a leaf blower that is obstructing my ability to hear. Okay, so the bigger picture right here, the bigger picture, I want to know what era we're in, where we're at in culture. We just had an off-year election, and maybe we'll throw a little bit of something else right here, a little bit of another media indicator of where we're at. It's the Condé Nast offices, Condé Nast, where apparently they put out Teen Vogue, which I don't know if they're just ending it or firing everybody or what, but there are Writers Guild people outside the door of the HR guy at Condé Nast. And let's just roll the tape on that. I'm fascinated by these interactions. Everybody's different bubbles.
I'm sorry. What's your definition of congregation?
Can we get the volume up?
So everyone, we appreciate if you would go back to the workplace
Is there a place that you would be able to speak to us?
Not today. We have other things going on.
Do you think we're not worth speaking to, Stan?
Those are your words, not mine.
But they might be our beliefs.
They're not my beliefs.
Oh, okay. So you do think we're worth speaking to?
Everyone should go back to your workplace.
I work here.
You dismiss us instead of talk to us.
You
about
told us
issues
that we
think
had
about
to
Florida.
come work in person here 4 days a week. This is our
So
work.
is he like our Pied Piper now? Or
Stan, are you running away from us?
No, I'm directing you back to your place of work.
And, okay, where's my place of work?
If you could just go this way, you guys.
Will you come this way with us? No,
No, I'm in a meeting. I'm working.
Okay, well, we have some quick questions. If you answer them,
Okay.
we'd be happy to go back to our desks.
All right. Thank you.
For you?
Thank you.
You don't want to answer any questions?
I've directed you back to your workplace.
Is that a good answer, guys?
Absolutely not. Come on, Stan.
That's not a really good answer, Stan.
We're
Stan, these
concerned
are your-
about our colleagues.
Yeah.
We're
Stan, we
concerned
weren't
about
concerned about our
our
company.
And you're disengaging with the employees who work here.
Did you let go of T and Vogue for political reasons? What are you going to do to stand up to the Trump administration?
Oh my God. Yeah. I felt bad for Sofel. I don't feel bad for anybody in that clip right there. A few of them were fired. I don't feel for them at all. I've been
You
fired
feel for
twice.
the HR guy?
Yeah, that's my guy right there. Somebody said in that clip, he seems like a great hang sarcastically. And I felt he does. That guy's cool. I like that guy.
It was pretty impressive how he maintained his equanimity in that. Like, I don't think that there's any like way that I could have like lived my life a million times and wound up being like the HR guy for Condé Nast. But let's say I did, I don't think I would have been able to handle that as
I
well.
think you would have done a good job in that role. I think you would have done a nice
I
professional
would
job.
never have been able to be calm that whole time. I would have just, I don't know what I would have said. I would have been like, okay, why don't you go run a company? Like, this, it's a free country. Go, you start. If you think we're doing a bad job, why don't you start a new media business and compete with us?
It's unbelievable to me. That's what I don't get is that the way work works is that you show up, and if somebody wants you around, they keep paying you. And if they don't, they stop paying you. And if they don't want to have you there, I don't know where this really goes. I don't
And
understand.
by the same token, if you don't like where you work, then go find another job.
Yeah. The guildification is maybe too big a topic for this particular podcast, but we've seen this, or YouTube show. We've seen this time and time again. We've seen this sort of cycle where a guild forms at a media company and everybody likes posting their emoji fists, and it seems like a great thing, and they get whatever concession they get, and then they all get fired. I mean, I've just seen it happen again and again, and I just don't understand it. I don't get it. I feel like we agreed to work in show business, Ryan. We agreed to work in, let's say, the least stable of professions, and whatever happens, happens. And yet there are these other people in our midst, in our business, you could call them peers, who entered into this under the assumption that they were assured of something permanent. I don't understand it.
Yeah, and I mean, again, they could like I don't understand what they think that they're like entitled to in this world. I don't know. I don't get it. And I wish that like that there could be like some type of director's cut of that video where it identifies who all these people are and what their body of work is. Like, I'd love to see, are these writers? They're probably writers, so I'd like to see what they produced.
I want to see it like one of those
I guess that we
movies.
could do that because there are like several of these people were like, I was one of the people fired. So I guess I didn't even know this clip was coming. I'm not gonna say I would have gone through their whole archives if I had, but it would be very interesting to see what work the people in this video who are accosting him have produced. And as far as like I would handle it if I were him, I think that I would just close my door and lock it, but then they would be like a standoff and they'd be waiting all day. So eventually, I don't know what I would say. I would just be like,
you'd have like millennial upspeak
would you,
at your door.
Maybe I'd go in the office and then call security on them. They call security, right? Like, so.
I love this detail right here from Jesse Single. In its latter years, less than 5% of Teen Vogue's readership was younger than 25 years old, according to one estimate. It was an outlet buying for 20 to 40 something radical chic types that had very little to do with teenagers. Yes, it's our hated millennial cohort, Ryan, the true villains of society yet again. But then at the same time, so there's some indicators of the aforementioned vibe shift, but then the Republicans get absolutely crushed on Tuesday. And yes, it's an off year election, but it was one of those results where you literally could not find a good indicator in the data for Republicans. So what's going on in the culture right now? Is there something happening where de-wokeification is going apace, and yet the forces marshaled against it are also losing political power?
I mean, yeah, because there's like overreach, right? You, the so I don't love talking about this, but like over the last several weeks in Chicago, I have had multiple notifications from my children's multiple schools that those schools are on lockdown because ICE raids are happening nearby.
Had the same thing out here, yeah.
It's just like I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh my God, my kid doesn't have recess because of this. Like, what the hell? And look, there's lots of other issues to go along with this, but they're doing this in these regions like Chicago and the Bay Area that did not vote for that. The people in Chicago and the Bay Area would not have voted for ICE raids and stuff. They're doing it basically to troll their opposition. It seems to me. Now, I don't think we should have open borders, but the fact that they're putting my kids' schools on lockdowns because of like these haphazard raids also makes me mad.
So you think that's maybe the overreach? I don't know enough when it comes to what propelled the Republican defeats in the specific states that they happened in. Maybe it was some of the ICE. Maybe it's just that Democrats have more higher propensity voters who will go out in droves to vote against Trump, even when he's not on the ballot. But the Trump side of things will not go out and vote without Trump on the ballot. I'm not sure. I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, I mean, Zoran is like his own type of thing, and he's very charismatic, and he's saying what a lot of people want to hear. And it's like basically, I think though, if you look at like the last 30 or 40 years of America, it's been a great time to have capital. Like if you own a company, if you own stocks, if you own your house, you're doing great because like yeah, we've had like a lot of inflation, but your asset value has appreciated either in line or in many cases above what inflation has done to the value of a dollar. But if you're somebody who is like relying on wages and you might have student loans, so you have negative ownership, let alone like assets, you're kind of just getting like swallowed right now. And it's been the case over the course of several decades. And I think that the people that's happening to are going to take it against anybody who's in charge.
Well, this is the section of the podcast where it's just us talking politics off the top of our head. So if you don't like something we said or think that our take is dumb, we're not professional political commentators necessarily. So just know this is just us at the bar. I don't know, and I could be wrong, but I don't know if people vote on pocketbook issues anymore. You would probably disagree with me because you track the inflation and you focus in on that. But I think I disabused myself of the assumption that the economy rules all in elections in the 2022 midterm, because on the basis of what was happening in the economy and with the inflation, the Democrats should have gotten crushed. But they, and I think in retrospect, we would say smartly, made their midterm campaign about abortion and about January 6th and had one of the best results for a party that had been in power in a midterm. So I don't know. It just seems like everything's culture war now.
The economy stuff lags too, because you can like for the 2022 midterms you mentioned, like people did have savings from COVID lockdowns between government stimuluses and just people weren't going out of their house as much for dining and entertainment or at all in the regions where we live, and you weren't allowed to do that stuff. And so then you have some savings, and then you can like start to accumulate like a little bit of credit card debt, and then all of a sudden it swallows you and you're paying 18% interest, and like you don't know where your next meal is going to come from. So there's like it can happen slowly and then all at once with the economy stuff, and I don't think it necessarily happens like the minute inflation hits. But I don't know. I don't know anything about this stuff. So
Well, but I think that in a way, I'm not saying that makes our commentary better, but we at least have some humility. I know I'm a freak. I know I'm not the average voter. I know I don't have a good theory of mind for other people. I know what's in my own mind. I can read polls, I can read results, I can look at a precinct map after the New York mayoral election and see interesting trends depending on neighborhood. But I'm not going to make the mistake, at least I try not to make the mistake of
oh,
going, this
I do have a
happened because of
prediction
my pet
though.
issue. What was that?
I have a prediction though. So what's going on in Chicago with like ICE and potentially the National Guard? Nobody in America, other than the people here, by and large, care. But Trump is going to send these people into New York City, and then all of a sudden, it's going to be all we hear about. So that's something that we can look forward to.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be handled with equanimity and I don't know, nuance and everything else. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen downstream of the mayoral result. I was interested in, again, the trends and patterns involved
Well,
in it. I was
Trump put
surprised.
up that like Trump Nix logo that they made him take down. That's what they call in show business foreshadowing.
I mean, Zoran won by less than I thought he would. Less than what the polls would indicate, but he also got a tremendous turnout. So again, that's another result where you can read into it whatever you want to
If
read
it
into
was
it.
just him versus Cuomo probably wins. But I liked Sliwa, like in the sense of like, where it's like, why should I drop out for him? Get your own votes. Like,
I had the same feeling. I had the same feeling. In retrospect, Sliwa is a primary character in why Mamdani won, but I also totally understood and vibed with the Sliwa perspective of, dude, you lost the primary. You already lost the primary, Cuomo. Go home. I won my primary. Why are you still here? I completely understood it. So I don't know. I don't know what happens if they run it back and Sliwa drops out, but yeah, it was much closer than we were led to believe. So that was intriguing and that was interesting as well. We've done it again, Ryan. We have delivered what everybody needs to know about American politics. So good, good job by us. Now promote your work, sir. Promote your work, and
I
we'll get
did
on
a
that air.
list of with Mike McCarthy at Front Office Sports yesterday of 26 rising play-by-play announcers. I think the play-by-play announcers are really the bones of live sports. If you have like a good one, you
Yeah.
really know it. He's got a great voice, great cadence, authority over the game. Think like Joe Buck, Ian Eagle, Prime Al Michaels, like Prime
Mm.
Marv Albert. Like when you've got one of those people, you know a game is big. We did a list of 26 people who are kind of below the public radar that are on some variation of like a cusp of breaking out and getting some bigger games. And I think we did a nice job on that list. So if you liked this show and want to support me, go click on that.
I love that stuff. I love a good announcer. I love a great local announcer. The Warriors, I won't say anything. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care, everybody.
Good job by you.